Jolly good.
Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson. Welcome to my beautiful channel. I'm so happy today to bring you my friend, Dr. Michael Salla. Dr. Michael Salla has been in the realm and the industry of exopolitics for over 30 years. He's an author of countless books, giving you, reporting on you, everything that's been happening on and off planet, in our military, in our governments. And he is world renowned for his integrity, for his ability in conflict resolution, and so many other areas. Dr. Michael Salla, welcome, my love.
Thank you, Dani. And just to maybe clarify for people, I have been practicing exopolitics since 2001. But prior to that, I was a political scientist since 1989, and I was teaching at a university, political science. I had degrees, PhD, and did field work in ethnic conflict. And in 2001, I got interested in this extraterrestrial phenomenon, the UFO cover-up, after watching Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project press conference, the first one. So, yeah, I think going all the way back, my political science career began in 89, but it was in 2001 that I really did the deep dive into exopolitics.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Let's get a little bit into that too, because you are considered a global expert. You truly are. And we know that everyone is watching you, the military, the governments, all these different agencies. They watch what Dr. Michael Salla is saying. They watch what you're doing. They watch who you interview. And it's really quite the phenomenon. Your channel is incredible. Dr. Michael Salla on YouTube, for example. Tell me exactly, and for those that may never have heard or understand, what does exopolitics actually mean in layman's terms?
Yeah, sure. Well, when I got involved in the whole UFO extraterrestrial issue, I thought, well, there needs to be a term that describes, what is going on. And because I was a political scientist working at American University in the School of International Service, I was a full-time professor at the time. So I thought, well, this needs to be given some name. So after I did my research, I did my due diligence to find out, because at the beginning, I had a full-time job and I had to work out, whether this was real or not. So it took me 18 months to kind of like feel my way into the field, to kind of like, well, are these people real? Are they genuine? They talk about extraterrestrial structures on the moon. They talk about crash retrievals involving UFO craft that have crashed. They talk about the government cover-up. So, I did my deep dive because I had a career. I mean, I was being interviewed on television. I had a full-time salary. And if I go down this path, it's like I was risking all of that. But, I did that deep dive. I was like, okay, is this real? And the more I studied it, the more I looked at things. And back in those days, internet was really just still in its infancy back around 2001, 2002. So, I did a lot of phone calls, talked to people, finding out, what they knew. And I was convinced that the field was real, that this cover-up was going on. And so I thought, well, because I was actually working in a political science department, the School of International Service, I thought, well, this is the branch of politics. Just like you have comparative politics, geopolitics, you have different types of politics within the field of political science. I thought, well, if you wanted to approach this phenomenon as a political scientist, what do you call it? And I thought, well, if we look at the biologists, what do? I mean, they have typical conventional biology, and then they have exobiology. So I thought, okay, well, that would be a good way to describe this field. So that's how I came up with the term exopolitics. That's how I began using it. And for me, it's always been about the study of extraterrestrial life and how it impacts politics.
That's incredible. And I wanted to have you explain that so that we can confirm that the original statement name to categorize a significant field that had largely been undiscovered and covered up, as you say. It actually did come from you, did it not?
Well, actually, the first use of the term exopolitics, when I did my kind of due diligence, it began at McGill University. There was supposedly a department of exopolitics at McGill University, but it was a psychological operation. It wasn't real. It was fictional. And there were, so people, others had talked about it. Alfred Weber talked about it. Stephen Bassett talked about it. But then in late 2002, beginning of 2003, that's when I came up with the term myself, created my own website, and then I published the first book on exopolitics, and that came out in 2004. So that was the first published book that people could buy and read in physical that was about exopolitics. So that came out in 2004. So that was the first one. And since that time, I've written 12 books dealing with exopolitics.
Amazing, amazing. Interesting you mentioned the word PSYOP, psychological operation. We know there are so many across the spectrum of all systems and all agencies, governments, military operations, and it goes into many other different areas of our life. Hollywood, for one, there's many, many different psychological operations. What would you say, in your opinion, right now might be classed as the biggest PSYOP?
Well, that's a difficult one, because the PSYOP against this whole UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon, goes back to the 1950s. So, I mean, they have been putting out psychological operations ever since then. Some of them are things like, I think probably the one that most impacts people's lives is Hollywood. People watch Hollywood and think that, oh, okay, this is fiction. They watch these shows like Star Trek or like Stargate SG-1, Battlestar Galactica. They watch Jupiter Ascending. I think, oh, that was a lot of fun. That was a blast. Men in Black. And it's like, well, those are all psychological operations, because one of the things that was discovered very early on was that the best way to hide a secret is to hide it in plain sight. So that way, if someone came forward and said, well, actually there's extraterrestrials are living amongst us, and there's a secret government organization that's set up to monitor them. Now, if you discovered that, if you interacted with extraterrestrials living amongst us, or you learned that, the psychological operation would be that, oh, you watched Men in Black, you just made it up. And that's brilliant. From a perspective of operatives, I mean, that's the best way of doing it. You hide the truth in plain sight. So everything that you want to hide, you put it out as a kind of as a movie. Or very early on, they used some of these, like some of these tabloid magazines in the United States. In Britain would be the same, like the World News, the National Enquirer. These were tabloids, and in there, they'd say, Bill Clinton slept with an alien, and they'll kind of like put out all this information about aliens, but in there they'll put in some truths. You see, and so that's the way they do it. So if you see, like if there's a UFO sighting, or someone has a contact in their area, and the National Enquirer will kind of come up with some fabricated story that creates a psyop around that. So, if an extraterrestrial craft lands and someone is taken on board, the National Enquirer will then say, oh, Joe Blow is a farmer, was taken on board, and he had sex with this beautiful Pleiadian, 6-foot beautiful woman, and they had sex multiple times, and they would just make up a lot of stories. So that way people would think that everyone talking about contact with extraterrestrials, that these human-looking extraterrestrials that were typically beautiful, that they were like, these were fabrications. People were just making it up. They were sensationalizing it. So yeah, that's been going on since the 50s.
Yeah. Amazing that you mentioned Hollywood as, in your opinion, as being one of the biggest psyops, because Hollywood is literally, I mean, every day it is crumbling, opening wide. People are running for the hills and people are coming forward. And to my mind, in this psychological operative phenomena, for want of a better expression, that we're seeing, because all the lids are blowing off everything, every system, every government, every country, all the lies that humanity has been told. There's nowhere else for the lie to go or the lie to hide. So people are coming out, and one of their forced things is to make people feel ridiculed. And if not to make them feel ridiculed and not talk of these things, then to isolate them. And they're two human survival instincts that most people will not be able to step forward and speak. I'm so happy that in the world we have people like you. We have Alex Collier, we have Elena Danan, we have Jean-Charles Moyen making his movies on these very true, very real experiences, because this is the history of our planet. It is a happening. We are interacting with extraterrestrials. We have had a lot of interaction with malevolent, in particular the governments on our planet. And these are the things that we will no longer not talk on. We will speak on them. And now the beautiful humans on our planet are starting to really, really listen and also validate their own experiences that they know they've had, indeed. Can I ask you, because I watched today part of your drop, you do a weekly review on all of the beautiful broadcasts that you do each week. And today in particular, you talked about China and this space fleet. Can you give us a bit of insight into what you feel is happening in China and what you know for absolute?
Well, as everyone knows, China recently became the biggest economy on the planet. I mean, for a few years now, it's had a bigger economy than the US in terms of PPP, that's purchasing parity. But recently, it will very soon have a bigger economy in kind of like a nominal currency terms. Now, why that's important? It's because China is funneling a lot of its resources into building a secret space navy. So I wrote a book called Rise of the Red Dragon, and I just detail the history of China's secret space program, how they've been building a space navy. Now, what's really important here is that China is the world's kind of like center of manufacturing. And when it comes to shipbuilding, China is streets ahead of everyone else. So a study just came out, and I mentioned it like just over a week ago. A study came out from a Pentagon source detailing that China's shipbuilding capacity beats the US Navy's shipbuilding capacity by a factor of 200 to 1. I mean, it was even more than that. It was like 250 to 1. I don't remember the exact number, but it's just monumental that China's just churning out all of these ships, especially for its navy, much faster than the US. So people think, okay, well, no, that's no big deal. That the US Navy still overall has these aircraft carriers. It'll be still top dog for a few years yet. But the thing is, China is building up. Now, as far as secret space programs are concerned, China has that same kind of competitive edge in manufacturing that it does in kind of conventional naval ships. So it's also building fleets of spacecraft for its space navy. And so this is something that people have been talking about for some years now. There's Lieutenant General Stephen Schwartz, who talked about that about 3-4 years ago, saying that, China has a secret space navy with cruisers, destroyers, and all of those things. So this is something that is known, that China is building a secret space navy. And so, that means that at some point, whatever kind of advantage or edge the US Navy or Solar Warden had, China's going to catch up. So that's why I think we're having a push for disclosure, because people within the US military, especially Space Command, they're looking at the future and they say, look, if we don't make this public, eventually China's going to have more ships than us in space. They're going to have kind of like more advanced. there's just going to be more of them. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that I think they're pushing for disclosure, because they want to make sure that the US allies all of its European and kind of Canadian and Latin American, all of its allies, so that they could all work together to make sure that China doesn't become top dog in space.
Very, very important that there are no more monopolies in any regard whatsoever, especially when it comes to the defending of this beautiful planet that we all live in and that we all have a voice in. And I think that's one of the things that the higher ups, as for want of a better expression, I've got plenty more, let's call them the higher ups, have decided that they are the voice for humanity, and that's sadly not correct. And as we move forward in this beautiful realm that we're all recreating, and that we're taking down all these systems and we're taking down all of the leaders, we the people are doing this ourselves, that we insist and we ensure that no one is ever got the most soldiers in their bag kind of thing, like imagine little boys playing soldiers or whatever, playing Monopoly and having the biggest money on the Monopoly board. That does not go forward. That is the old 2D, 3D life expression that we just don't tolerate anymore. I have several heroes in this day and time, July 2023. You are one of them. Elena Danaan is another. Jean-Charles Moyen. Alex Collier. Oh my gosh, Chris O'Connor. Tony Rodriguez, and among others, and I'm sorry for not mentioning you all, but I do want to talk about a beautiful, beautiful being by the name of JP, who is an army informer and a long-term friend of yours. I know that you met him before he went into the army, and he was this gorgeous, lovely young man, and he came to you in friendship and was sharing his extraterrestrial interactions with you, wasn't he?
Yeah, he phoned me back in 2008. He was in his early 20s, and he told me about his extraterrestrial contact in Brazil with these human-looking extraterrestrials. So that began our relationship. And over the years, he would phone, he would tell me what's going on, how he's being followed, how he's being kind of like encouraged to join some company to build technologies, or being told he should join the military. I always told him, better to be kind of like free and independent. But, it's very difficult, especially if you're a genuine contactee, if you're really having contacts with extraterrestrials, because, you have information, and that information is very valuable to entities like aerospace companies or to the military. And so, yeah, over the years, he was really kind of like encouraged to join one of these things. People would befriend him from the military, and they would say, well, JP, it would be really good if you joined the military. You could do this, you could do that. So eventually he did decide to join. And I think one of the critical things was that the Space Force and Space Command were created in 2019. And so for him, that was like, really very tempting. And he was told by his military friends that, well, if you join the military, you can be part of Space Force. Well, who would say no to that? Because Space Force was just being set up. So he joined. He joined just as, at that period when Space Force and Space Command was being set up. He joined. He joined, and he joined the army because he was told that, well, it doesn't really matter what service you join in, because once they've got Space Force set up, they're going to pull people out from the Navy, from the Army, from the Air Force, and they're going to put them into Space Force. And it doesn't matter anyway, because when you actually do operations, it's all under Space Command. And that's one of the things, that people probably don't understand about the military, that, you've got like, right now, you've got 5 military services, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and now Space Force. And each one of those services, they train people, they equip them, and they give them all the resources they need to go out and do, everything that a Marine does, or what a Navy sailor does, or an Air Force pilot does. But when they're actually out wherever it is in the world, it's not as though they're told to do things by the person running that military service. it's these combatant commands, and there's 11 of them. There's like 7 geographical combatant commands in the United States, and so each of these combatant commands has an area of responsibility. So Space Command has the area of responsibility for everything that happens above 60 miles. So everything above 60 miles in space or in the atmosphere is the domain of Space Command. So it doesn't really matter what service you belong to. Once you are deployed for an off-world mission, Space Command is running the show. So that's what's happened. So soon after JP joined in 2019, he was soon doing missions for US Space Command. And he's still doing missions for US Space Command. And even though he's officially with the US Army, he is stationed at a base, and he is called away on TDYs or temporary duty whenever there's a mission to be needed. So there's no problem. It's very seamless. So it's a great cover too, because it means that he's in the Army, but he's doing all these missions for Space Command in deep space or underground spaceports or civilizations, or even underwater civilizations. And that's where you kind of like get into this pissing contest between Space Command and Northern Command, and I can talk about that if you want.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I had the honor last year of meeting beautiful JP. A few of us went for a dinner. We had a meeting at the back of a restaurant, and he, as one would expect, is in the most magnificent shape. I mean, he is a solid, big guy. And I just love the fact that I knew he'd sit with his back to the wall. You know, I kind of assumed that. And I was kind of sitting almost facing him with loads of others around in this meeting we were having in this restaurant. We were at the back. And all of a sudden, one of the waiters dropped a tray and it clattered. And before most of us had even gone like this to look round, he'd like leapt over the table, spun in the air, landed a perfect arabesque, forward roll, and then stood there ready to it's like, oh my God, like, oh, human. And it's incredible. And he was just the coolest, had his composure. Like, he's just an extraordinary, beautiful being. Now, in that, you know, a lot of people who are able to evolve or, you know, exceed their own expectations in, let's say, a military environment and for the greater good of humanity, we've come to understand that there is some people whose DNA is extraordinarily important, because the DNA they've come in with literally has an ability to affect frequency, multi-dimensions, and other areas that we call space portals, stargates, and that kind of thing. Can you share a little bit about his abilities, and also that he's been covering privately with you? We never see his face on camera, nor will we. And he's been sharing with you spaceports and space arcs. So can you talk about him and his DNA and what you feel about that, and what a spaceport and a space arc is? Because a lot of people are getting confused as we're rolling out this information.
Right. Well, I mean, this was one of the things that I think that really got the military interested in JP. I mean, back in 2015, 2016, he was telling me that he was being taken to these underground civilizations where there were these ancient technologies, remnants of ancient civilizations. He was being taken to these biohabitats or like space arcs in space or underground. He was taken to all these places, and he was typically taken there by a combination of Nordics and Air Force people. And the Air Force people were taking him there because they were testing him. They wanted to see what he could access, because that's one of the things about these ancient technologies, space arcs, underground civilizations, is that if you don't have the right DNA or the right consciousness, you could get severely injured. You could die, and that was happening. I mean, Elena Danaan came out with this book on Stephen Chua, and he was told when he went to Area 51 to fly one of these specially modified F-15s and F-15F, as I recall, that a lot of normal pilots, a lot of Air Force pilots tried to fly these modified F-15s because they incorporated some ET technology, which was fly-by-thought technology. So as it suggests, you just fly according to what your thought tells the instrumentation or the technologies that are in there. And what it was found is that people that can access that technology need to have a lot of gamma brainwave activity, and if they don't, then they can't operate it. So these guys were being given these pills that would induce gamma brainwave activity, and so they would fly these F-15s. They would have high gamma brainwave activity, and then they would suffer severe brain damage because of that. So Stephen Chua, he came in and he could fly these things because he produced gamma brainwaves organically. It wasn't through a pill or anything. It was organic. And so he could easily fly this thing without any problem. And so once they realized that, okay, you need to have a special DNA and consciousness to be able to use these technologies, they were looking for people who had that. And contactees, extraterrestrial contactees, they had those abilities. So JP has those abilities to be able to interact safely with these ET technologies. And he's able to go into space arcs and these things activate. And whereas someone else could go in there, and nothing would happen at best. And at worst, if you got too close, you could be severely injured. So his DNA, his consciousness are very, very special. And they was something that were highly sought by the military, who wanted to use him and others in these programs. And that's why they've been using contactees for kind of like understanding ET life and technology for decades, but they've kind of really upped the ante now that they're finding more and more of these technologies, and they're encountering more and more of these space arcs that are activating, that they really need the people whose DNA and consciousness is a good fit for that. And it seems that a lot of the people that can enter the space arcs, and JP's talked about this in several of our interviews, are the crew of the space arcs. And so that's a really fascinating one, because who are the crew of these space arcs? And so the crew of the space arcs are people who have incarnated on Earth, and they're just living normal lives. What they think they might be normal lives. They're living normal lives, but they actually have a past life connection. I mean, they're actually, their soul has incarnated, but their soul is the soul of a crew person or crew member of one of these space arcs. And so there must be, thousands of these people all over the planet not realizing. And so what the military are doing is they're trying to find these people, because these are the ones that have the key, the DNA and the consciousness to be able to access these space arcs, because the space arcs are very complex, they're very compartmentalized. So some people can open up certain areas in a particular spacecraft, but not other areas. And so that's where they're really doing a lot to try and find out who the crew is. And then there's also the avatar bodies on the space arcs themselves. So that's another fascinating issue.
I mean, we could do a deep dive on that. It would take us 4 hours. I think the most kind way to gift to the audience that sees this a way for them to really fully get a download on JP and his basic experiences, although they are far from basic, but let's talk about the book you just wrote together.
Right. Yeah. Well, that book is where I finally got to put it all together. I mean, I've been taking notes about JP's experiences since 2008. And so you can imagine, over the course of 15 years, you take these notes of a person having this experience and that experience. And one of the things that really got me early on was just how kind of haphazard and disjointed the experiences were. Like one wouldn't constantly flow to another. They would be just completely different every time. And so that was very frustrating for me because I'm very left brain, very logical. I try and order things, typical male left brain. It's all got to be neat and logical. And if it's out of sequence or kind of like out of left field, it's like, it's like, what's going on? And so JP, he's total right brain. He's totally in that place of creation. So everything for him was like that. It was just appeared to me to be disjointed. But it was only when I put it all together in the book that it finally made sense. It all came together and it was like, wow, I just didn't realize how important his testimony was. I've been working in the field since, as I said, 2001. I've been interviewing people since 2000 since back to 2001, I've been interviewing people on the ET phenomenon. So, I've gotten a lot of very interesting stories. And so there are other people who had more interesting stories, but it was only when it all came together that I realized, wow, JP's story just blows other people's stories that I've been kind of like working with, like out of the water. I mean, there are a few that stand out because in this field, what I've found is that it's all about quality. It's, there's a lot of people out there saying, yeah, I was taken up on the ships and yeah, I'm part of the secret space programs. Yeah, I'm a super soldier. But when you look closely, when you kind of like do the vetting and you examine, there's nothing there, or there might be just stories. And, if a person's just got a story, an interesting story, but it doesn't match, there's nothing to kind of like corroborate it, then it's like, well, then I eventually start to lose interest in that. But JP, his story kind of like holds together, and he's got photographs. I mean, that's what got me to go public about JP, because up until 2017, as I said, JP would give me all these stories of like going into these ancient civilizations, seeing these kind of tombs, these huge halls with ancient technologies, portals and stargates and all of that in there. And so I'm just taking notes and occasionally recording him, but I'm thinking, well, I can't go out. No one else is talking about this. I'm not going to stick my neck out and talk about this. So I just took notes. And so that's the way it went for up until 2017. And that's when he started taking photographs of the craft that he was seeing and that he was being taken on. And these craft were craft that were either Nordic extraterrestrial or the Air Force Secret Space Program. So, so not only did he have the story, he actually had the photographs. So that put him in a kind of league of his own. So for me, it's all about quality. You have just a few people who are, like you vetted them, you totally trust their testimony, and so you can like learn a lot by working with those people. And you continue to work with others. I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I continue to work with others and find information. But the ones that stand out are the people like JP, Elena Danaan, Jean-Charles, and there's a few others that kind of stand out in terms of the quality of their information and the kind of like physical evidence that they bring up. Like Jean-Charles Moyen and Elena have both got a lot of evidence. So you don't have just stories. You have evidence. You have cross corroboration, and you also have like mutual recognition, where Jean-Charles and Elena have been on similar spacecraft, or they've been teleported to to the same location, or they recognize, like JP will recognize Jean-Charles as someone that he saw in one of the missions, or Chris O'Connor would say the same thing, that he recognized Jean-Charles, and so forth. So, and Tony Rodriguez. So, to me, it's all about quality. It's all about trying to gather as much evidence that we can to substantiate that. And like, because, to me, the thing is, there's going to be there's going to be a stampede of people very soon wanting to learn the truth, and there's a lot of kind of noise out there, and so you've got to give them, the right signal. You've got to help, and that's what I feel that's my job, is to try and help people sort out the signal from the noise. The noise being people who maybe are part of a psychological operation, deluded, wannabes. You have a lot of that, and because there's a lot of people who are very creative, and as I understand it, the subconscious can be very creative. So there's a lot of people that will just jump on these testimonies and will just manufacture something out of thin air. So you got to do the vetting. You got to find out, well, why is this person going public? Because that's the one thing that is, one of the things I used to kind of sort out. Well, who's the real insider or contactee from those that are deluded or part of a psyop? Is that those that are kind of real, they tend to be people who have something to lose from coming forward. Like in JP's case, he has something to lose. I mean, if his identity is exposed, I mean, he's got a military career now. I mean, he's got a full-time salary, he's got a family to support. So he's got a lot to lose if he's putting out information and he gets exposed, or that it's fake or contrived in any way. Whereas people who don't have anything to lose, that just get out there, for them, they're seeking attention. And so you, as a researcher, you got to sort out the wheat from the chaff.
It's a hell of a responsibility that you have, most definitely. So much to say about JP and the truth that he's bringing, and the others that you mentioned. For me, I look for, when I see them, whether I've met them in person, which pretty much everybody I have at this stage, but even if I see them online, I'm feeling for a resonance. I'm checking on my own gut. I'm checking on what does my heart frequency say when I'm reading someone like that. That's a really big tell. But the other thing for me is, like you said, physical evidence. We have to bring physical evidence. At this stage in 2023, we are in full-on, in my opinion, full-on disclosure. Why would Chris O'Connor be taken upstairs? Why would Tony Rodrigues be taken? Why would Jean-Charles Moyen be taken, for example? Now, if we look at Tony Rodrigues and Chris O'Connor, they've brought back actual physical technology that they are manufacturing as a means to support humanity. And you have to ask yourself, if someone's standing there with just some knockoff story, what was the point of you going up there when there are other people with the same or similar story? What good was that? What was the intention behind that? The team upstairs that worked with you, that gave you insight and access to information and technology to help humanity, because we've been so repressed across the board, every institution, medical, was it the industrial medical complex, the industrial military complex, the industrial educational complex, all these organizations plugging in to siphon off really caring for humanity. And these men and women have brought forward the most incredible technology to support planet Earth. And that's another really, really big tell for me as well. When people are going, I'm not sure if I believe that, I don't know how I feel about this, where's the proof, where's the evidence? Or you get some bloody, Billy bullshitter himself sitting there going, show me the evidence. I'm like, dude, look online, look at people like Dr. Michael Salla, Elena Danan, and go look at their videos, and then take a deep breath, and then have a little thinky dink, because there's way too many people coming at all of us with different opinions and absolutely nothing to back it up except for internal wounds and meanness. It's quite incredible. In terms of what the space arcs look like, can you give us a brief description on what they look like, size of them, and where are they on the planet currently?
Well, the way JP has described them is that they are ovoid in shape, and they range in size. So some of them can be, I think he described the Atlantic space arc as roughly, I think it was about 3 football fields in length. 3 aircraft carriers in length. So we're talking probably a kilometer, half a mile in size, an ovoid shape. And, that's very big, because inside you've got multiple levels and so forth. He's described these arcs. He's described 9 of them around the world, and in the US Army Insider book, I go into detail about those 9, and he's been on also a space arc on the moon. They found one on the moon, so he's been in that one as well. And the interesting thing is, others have also been in some of these space arcs, or been in the vicinity of a space arc. I know that Jean-Charles and Elena both traveled to Antarctica, and they were close to or in the vicinity of one of these space arcs down in Antarctica, that they teleported down there, and they saw one. So JP has described 9 that he knows of. Jean-Charles has described that he's teleported to several of these space arcs. One in Tokyo. He's described the one in Antarctica. He's described one under the Giza pyramid. He's described Tibet, and he's also described Mauna Kea in Hawaii, that he's been to these different space arcs. But they vary in size. So, but they all have that kind of distinctive flying saucer ovoid shape. And I thought it was very interesting with Jean-Charles, how he described the space arcs that he went to in Mount Fuji, Japan, and in Mauna Kea, that there were these guardians there. And psychics, or kind of like spiritualists, might refer to these guardians as like divas, like they're like a diva-like being, or a guardian angel or something. But they were there to protect the space arcs. They're there to make sure that the only people that go in are the ones that are meant to. So that's the thing, that these ancient technologies, space arcs, wherever they're contacted, wherever they are around the planet, they not only have they been left by ancient civilizations, extraterrestrial civilizations, and they have these very high dimensional capabilities and really advanced technologies, and they have some intelligence, but there are also these protectors around them to make sure that only people with the right vibe has access. So that's another thing about these things. So yeah, JP's most recent mission that I just put out this week, where he went for the 4th time to the Atlantic space arc. I mean, that's a real barn burner, that one. I mean, he describes meeting or seeing this kind of like encountering this kind of statue-like entity. Like, it looks just like a statue, but it's quite clear that this is a protective entity there. It's got a 3rd eye, and it just looked like a statue, but it was quite clear that this was a protector. And I've come across these kind of beings in the past. Others have described them. So they clearly fulfill a function to make sure that whoever proceeds beyond has permission. And so this protector, this statue, was there, and JP and his team, I think he described 6 of them, they were able to go on and fulfill their mission. And their mission was to take a jewel, a crystal jewel, out of that space arc. And this jewel was like a key for activating other space arcs and activating ancient technologies. And JP said when he went up to the surface, where there's a naval vessel floating above the space arc, which is submerged at the bottom of the Atlantic, there in the Bermuda Triangle area, he said that the first thing was that they went up there, and they had gone down, I think it was morning, they got up there, for them it was like 2 or 3 hours they were in the space arc. They went up, and it was dark. And when they asked what's going on, because we didn't have radio communications, it was lost. It was like, oh, you were gone for 2 days. So they had missing time. Mm-hmm. And JP had began to describe that during that missing time, they were interacting with extraterrestrials in the space ark. So, that's very interesting. Who are they interacting with? Were they extraterrestrials? Were they the crew? This is where the whole time thing comes in. Were they the crew? And where are the crew? Are they suspended in stasis chambers up there? Are they kind of like active in some kind of strange time construct? Are they incarnated on the Earth? But the main thing that I took away from that was that JP and his team had permission to take this crystal out, this crystal jewel out of the space ark. And he described how emotional it was, because he said as soon as they were in the vicinity of this jewel, they began crying because it was connected to the energies of the Earth. And they could feel the energies of Gaia. And Gaia is like, crying at what's happening at the planet. And all of us who are sensitive can feel this. That's why we're so determined to like make the world a better place, because we can feel the soul of Gaia crying. Because that, I think, is what brought us, many of us here, many listening to this. It's no accident you're here listening to this. It's no accident you incarnated on Earth, because you came because of the cry of Gaia, that Gaia needed help. She said, she needed help. So we came, bright lights, carrying this high dimensional consciousness and frequency. We brought her onto this planet. Some of us have been here for one life. Some of us have been here for many lives. But we've been here. We carry that higher energy, and we're all here to help Gaia. We're here to help free Gaia of this oppressive energy that has been manipulating humanity and the planet for millennia. So when they took this jewel, they could feel the energy of Gaia, and they all started crying, very emotional. And JP initially said, well, why are we doing this? Why are we taking this? And he said there was a Marine in charge of the mission, and he said, it's a key. What we're taking is a key, and it's okay. It's going to open up other arcs. And so when JP went up to the surface, he said that there was a flotilla of ships around this Navy ship. He'd never seen a flotilla of ships around before, and it was an international flotilla. There were like 15 nations there that were there to watch the retrieval of this crystal jewel that would activate ancient technologies and arcs in other areas. And I think it's very, very important, because that shows that even that shows that when it comes to this level of space programs, that the major nations are cooperating. They are definitely coordinating and cooperating. Space Command is kind of like leading this international effort to deal with these technologies and the activation of the space arcs, because I think this is part of the test for humanity. I mean, people behind the scenes have no clue. Those that are like, show me the evidence that this is real. It's like they have no clue. They haven't even gotten to first base. We're like at third base. We've done our due diligence. We know what's going on. We understanding the big picture, and the big picture right now is these space arcs are activating, and what they're wanting to see is our planet ready for the activation and the appearance of the space arcs? Is our planet going to descend into kind of like conflict and violence? And if so, that'll influence how the space arcs appear and how they're going to interact with humanity. Or does humanity get its shit together finally and like, oh, okay, we got our shit together. We are working together. We understand, that we are not going to fight one another over the possession of these space arcs and the control of these space arcs. So we're going to cooperate. And the arcs are looking at that. And if that's the case, when they rise, when they kind of like start to come up, they'll share their technologies. And this is a first step in that. This space arc is sharing its technology, which is this crystal jewel that is now being taken up in this mission overseen by US Space Command, where the other major nations were present, and it's an international coordinated initiative. And this goes back to Elena Danaan telling us back in 2001 at the Ashtar Command facility, where you had was 14 spacefaring nations that were represented at those meetings, and it was decided that the US would be the one that would be the chair and would be kind of like the leader amongst for all of the space nations that were represented at the Ashtar Command. So those are called now the Jupiter Accords. So the Jupiter Accords recognize the United States as the leader for coordinating all of Earth's nations, for not only interacting with extraterrestrial civilizations, but also for coordinating all the nations for finding the space arcs, the hidden halls of records, the ancient civilizations that are all over the earth, that the US is going to coordinate all of the nations to do it in a harmonious way. So this mission was a very important one, because to me, it's a tangible sign of how there is now a united, coordinated effort amongst the different nations to work with the ETs, to work with the space arcs, and to use these technologies in a way where all the nations are represented and that they all have a stake in it, and they're not going to just descend into fighting over these things.
That is such a beautiful, beautiful, expressive, it's a reality that happened. And to know that all these nations were there witnessing this very, very, very special, harmonious, incredible event that is going to continue the development and involvement of truth, of the planet herself, of all of us. I know that the way that JP described the crystal, it was dark purple and black, and it had like white threads through it that almost looked like light. When we hear JP's voice, I remember in the beginning when he first started speaking with you on your channel, Exopolitics Today is the name of your channel. I remember there were a couple of people saying he doesn't sound like a soldier, and very, very critical, and expecting to be hearing some very programmed, militarized, owned individual. But JP's none of those things. I mean, he will kick your ass. He is very respectful. He is very, very in harmony with the role that he has. And of course, he follows protocol, because there are protocols in the military, but nobody owns that man. And his accent is incredible. I mean, he speaks English, Portuguese, and Spanish, right?
Right, yeah. English isn't his first language. I mean, he was raised at home speaking Spanish, and at some point he learned Portuguese and English as well. But at home, he always spoke Spanish. And so, his English grammatical skills are definitely not the skills of someone who's kind of polished and gone through a university program. It's kind of very rudimentary, and people, people think, well, if someone is having contact with extraterrestrials, they must be special and must be very gifted. And I mean, that's all very true and very intelligent. And JP has a very deep intelligence, but it's not expressed in that kind of left brain logical way that people who have gone through the university system, such as myself, have. We go through that system, and we kind of learn to think and express ourselves in a way that's kind of very polished. And people will say, "Oh yeah, well clearly that's a educated person." When people listen to JP, they make the mistake of thinking, "Well, he doesn't sound very educated. He's not very polished. So is this real?" And it's like, well, it's definitely real. It's just that his skill set is very different. I could not do what JP is doing. No way could I go onto a space arc and kind of like connect with it in the way that JP is connecting with it, because someone trying to approach extraterrestrial technologies using the left brain analytical processes, you're not, maybe you'll get the first base if you're very lucky, but to get to second, third base, you got to exercise that right brain and be very intuitive and have the gestalt working and just kind of like understand how it all fits together, and JP has that. So yeah, people that listen to him, I think, you know, what they got to appreciate, that he is very right brain. He's very kind of like intuitive, and but that's exactly the sort of person that is better able to understand these kinds of phenomena, because we're talking about things that go beyond our conventional space-time linear thinking. I mean, you're talking about time dilations, you're talking about higher densities, you know, different dimensions, portals, you know, all of these things, you know, these are not something you can handle using left brain logical processes. These are things that people like JP can navigate much more easily and understand.
I think, you know, I don't think I know that this man, JP in particular, is such an incredible gift at this time of full disclosure, in so many ways. And it also kind of levels the field. You know, it's like he clearly is not from Sandhurst military school in Britain, right? Thank goodness, because we need to collapse all the bullshit systems that you don't have somebody presenting the information he is. It's at this high, ridiculously groomed and managed and owned level. We have a real human being with beautiful technologies and abilities that has decided to enter the army so he could do more for humanity. End of. I also love that all the nations were present, showing each one of those nations that represented themselves on their ships, on their flotilla, that no one is in charge, no one single person, no one single country. We won't allow it. For those out there that might be thinking, well, if I go to, you know, under Lake Vostok, or I go to the Himalayas, to the space arcs there, I can use somebody that I know has the DNA frequency, but they're still not going to penetrate, because there's guardians, there's frequency gates. And if you're going to take someone and fear them into telling you or using it, these locks and these gates are in place. Of course they are. There's proof we've never been able to access until now in the way that we are. So we know there are many, many safety protocols in place for the right information to come into the right hands at this time of ascension that we're in. Let's talk a little bit about the space arcs. We know that Jean-Charles and Elena Danan in particular have been under Lake Vostok in Antarctica. And I know that you and I and Elena and Jean-Charles are soon going to release a drop we're doing on Antarctica. But for now, Lake Vostok. And then we have Jean-Charles' information on the Himalayas, on Gsic, and in Hawaii. And he has always, since a little tiny boy, drawn pictures, and his mum and dad have been witness to his life too. So in reference to people bringing proof and hard evidence, Jean-Charles is definitely someone, and he sent me his movie trailer today. I was just full of goosebumps, God bumps, good bumps, whatever you want to call them. So exciting that this latest film of his experiences are coming out. It's just incredible. Let's take a step back to the spaceport. Now, can you tell us what they look like from your understanding, and where are the space ports? What do we need them for? Just for those that don't know.
Okay, well, you know, JP's described going to several of these spaceports. So the two that I've talked about most recently, one in the area of Alabama, Tennessee, and I think it was there was one more state there, Louisiana, I think it is, or Mississippi, I can't remember, but in that kind of like tri-state area. And so we think it's somewhere in the area of Huntsville, Alabama. Somewhere in that area is a spaceport, and what that is that it's underground. And there's a mountain over it, so it's underground, a mountain, and it's a massive cavern where you have like on the one hand there looks like it's a Nordic extraterrestrial civilization down there, or that you might describe them as inner earthers, because that's the other thing. Some of these extraterrestrial civilizations come to the earth. They establish colonies, they establish a physical presence, and they might be there for centuries. So at some point, what do you call them? Are they earthers? So JP described a kind of like a city where there were these very tall Nordic-looking humans. So maybe you can call them an inner Earth civilization, but they clearly are colonists from one of the Nordic extraterrestrial civilizations. And then he said adjacent to it is a spaceport, a very large spaceport. He describes seeing hundreds of these flying saucer type craft. And he said that they were becoming more active, that they were appearing more often in Earth's skies, and that this is part of humanity's awakening, that these craft would be seen more, that people would see them and they would know these are definitely non-human or non-Earth, they're not terrestrial. So there's that. And so the inner Earth, the beings also say that they are going to be interacting more with humanity, that they are going to let more humans go into these underground civilizations and see things. So you've got an underground spaceport that is run by a Nordic extraterrestrial civilization that is working alongside an underground civilization of inner Earth beings who also look very Nordic. So that's the one that he went to in that area. We guess it's somewhere in the area of kind of northern Alabama near the Tennessee border, in that Huntsville kind of cabin area. And it's very interesting that is known as one of the hotspots, the cave hotspots in the United States, is that area of northern Alabama near the Tennessee border. There's a lot of big caverns, a lot of caves down there. So it's not surprising that there's this underground civilization. And he said that the mountain is over this spaceport, and he said out of the mountain, he described something like a laser beam, but it's like a stealth laser. It just goes up. It's not precisely a laser beam. It's some kind of technology that looks like a laser light shooting up straight out of the mountain into the atmosphere, high up into the atmosphere. And of course, that goes down into the spaceport. And he said that's the way that they enter and leave. And it's using stealth technology. So people won't see it at all. If you're around, even during daylight, if these craft are entering or leaving that spaceport through this kind of like beam of light, that's kind of, he described it as like stealth and mirror-like, that just shoots up into the sky, people wouldn't know. But that's how the spaceport is used.
Yeah.
So that's one spaceport. There's another one in the South Atlantic, but just in case you wanted to chime in or ask questions about that particular spaceport, I'm happy to answer.
Well, I mean, what you're describing in terms of the camouflage or the cloaking technology, it's just so frustrating. And then, there are people like me that are able to see into dimensions and through people and around people and look at things. And I was driving my car the other day. I'm looking up and I'm seeing the biggest shaft of completely straight light. I mean, it was so big, I couldn't even tell you an estimate of how large this craft was. And it was like an open door. It's like a complete shadow of a straight door in the sky. And then it had edges. And I'm driving along looking up, and I stopped and took a picture and carried, and I'm thinking, I can't believe people aren't throwing their cars to the side of the road and that they can't see that, but again, we're unconscious to it. There's very many things we're unconscious to, but people are in general definitely starting to see more, conversations like this definitely allows people awareness. It allows them to give themselves permission and drop inside. And then when we talk about somebody like JP, to the extent that we are, one of the things that's so lovely lovely to share is that we've got to the point where on many levels where we've been told if you don't have this degree or this level of education, for example, you can't be considered authentic or anyone's going to listen to you, and that's a lie. And what we're now really coming to understand, it's love and kindness and emotional intelligence that opens all the doors, that holds all the keys for humanity, because we naturally are beautiful, loving, benevolent beings at our core, at our natural nature, which is wonderful. The spaceport in the ocean, yeah, tell us a bit about what you've heard about that, where it is, and anything else that you'd like to add.
Okay, so there was another one that he went to in the South Atlantic. And what was interesting was that he said that this particular spaceport was under this island, but this island is not on any map. It's not on any kind of Google map or anything like that, Google Earth. So somehow they are able to scrub the records of Google Earth to not show this island. And he said this island, on the surface of it, it has statues, it has remnants of kind of like ancient Egyptian civilization there. So it's like, well, how did the Egyptians get to the South Atlantic? I mean, clearly there was once a worldwide civilization. He describes seeing a pyramid and like an obelisk right next to each other. So, you know, that's where you get to understand that, oh, okay, there was once a worldwide power grid involving pyramids and obelisks. That these can be found all over the place. And of course, the powers that be, you know, they want to hide all evidence of that and just kind of like not give people any encouragement that once there was a global energy power grid that wirelessly transmitted electrical energy. Because the Earth produces electrical energy, a lot of electrical energy, and pyramids are a great way of kind of like channeling or creating and harnessing that energy, and then you put it out in a way that it forms a kind of standing wave in the atmosphere that can be tapped into by planes or cities or homes. So that's very interesting. But what he said was underneath that island was a massive spaceport. He said it was hard to believe. He said it was like 50 times bigger than the one under this area in Alabama that I was describing. So, you know, 50 times bigger. So, you know, we're talking something really, really big, a spaceport. And you've got all kinds of extraterrestrial craft coming in and out. And so, yeah, I described that in one of the recent updates. So, you know, what that tells us is that, you know, there is just a lot of things that are buried all over the earth, and people don't know what's there. These spaceports are all over the place, and you have extraterrestrials in there, you have inner Earth beings in there, and of course, you know, we don't know anything. But now we're entering a time where people are waking up. Governments, or, you know, let's just say the white hats, the Earth Alliance, the positive military, are leaking more and more stuff. More and more stuff is coming out. In the United States, we've got legislation that's, you know, going through the kind of like congressional hoops that will create the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Disclosure Act of 2023. So, you know, when you look at that, it lays the foundations for all of this to be revealed. And, you know, so that's really exciting, because I think all of this stuff, you know, within the next 10 years, all of this stuff, by 2030, everyone will know about this, all this stuff. It will be revealed. But the next 7 years, you know, as this decade plays out, you know, more and more will be coming out. But I think the white hats are doing it in a very careful way. You know, first they're talking about the reverse engineered technologies. They're getting these whistleblowers to come forward saying that, well, I know of a project where this advanced technology, off-wall technology, is being reverse engineered, and so that'll be released first, and the technologies will be released of that, and so people will start to feel more comfortable that, we've got our own free energy sources now, we've got our kind of like alternative healing now, and so that'll start to build up the technological infrastructure on the planet. Will start to move up. We start to move up from like a type 0 civilization to a type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. I'm sure you know that, right? Type 1, type 2, type 3 extraterrestrial civilizations. We are like at a 0.7. So we're going to move up to type 1 as all of this technology is released and we graduate. We stop using fossil fuels. We stop using kind of like pharmaceuticals that are a derivative of fossil fuels, and we start using kind of like advanced healing modalities. So that's part of what's coming.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's so many different layers and levels to that element that you're discussing there. And you mentioned it's called the UAP Act. And I want to line all the people up and spank them hard because they shouldn't have said UAP. That's another distraction. They should call it UFO because it's probably not a person on the planet that has access to imagery or has seen them themselves. And then as someone say, that's a UFO. It is a blanket name and has been a blanket name. And they put now UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, or unidentified aquatic product, or it's so irritating to me and insulting. So whatever reason they give behind it, UAP, they're trying to force that. And I'm like, no, it's UFO. Except that half the UFOs we see are military, reverse engineered craft, not driven by our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters, but driven by human beings like you and I. There's also been the fleet you mentioned earlier, the space fleet known as Solar Warden, built by humans, military personnel. Most countries in the world have agreements together, accords together, and they're all flying, docking their craft, like Jean-Charles told us. The craft he flies on from the French military is called the SALLA'S. Him and the military team would get on the SALLA'S, fly up through the Earth's atmosphere, up and beyond stationary orbit, which is where the satellites and telecoms are, and dock onto Solar Warden mothership. But there aren't enough people that know this, and people are going to be pissed when they find out that they've been lied to about pretty much every single system and the reality of how brilliant, how genius we as a race of beings are. So anyway, I know it's moving too slow for some, but there are so many beautiful things happening literally every single day. One of the most beautiful things in my life that's happening in the next few months is our second Galactic and Spiritual Informers Connection, our conference that we held last year in Orlando, Florida. You were a speaker there. Your presentation was just off the charts, literally. And you were showing many photographs that beautiful JP has taken. And this year you're a speaker again. I'm so excited. So tell us a little bit about what you think about, we call it Gsic, Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, as you know. What do you think about Gsic? What's its relevance? And what are you going to be speaking about this year?
Well, Gsic is like unique. It really is like a family reunion. I mean, that's the feeling you get when you get there, because energetically, there's a great resonance because people are understanding the relevance of all of this information coming from the speakers that you've been mentioning. I mean, Elena, Jean-Charles, JP, myself, Alex, Collier, that people resonate with that. So when they all come together, it's like a family reunion. And to me, this is kind of like almost like a new phase in terms of my research now, is that I'm understanding that it's not about soul starseeds. It's about soul groups now, that we incarnate on this planet as part of a group, and that these groups incarnate and they coordinate with other groups. And now, to me, it's like, wow, this is really all about finding one's soul group. It's not about you as an individual star seed. You're the hero. You're out there to, break down the barriers and like reveal the truth and be the hero. You're really part of a group. You're working together, and everyone is supporting everyone else in the mission. And that's what I'm learning, because that is totally what has happened in my life. That it's certainly I have my role, but I have such an incredible group around me that are helping me as I make my journey. So the Galactic Spiritual Informers connection, it really, I mean, you were inspired coming up with that name, because it really is all about connection. And it's like, what I would tell people that are watching this is say, come, because it's all about finding your soul group. And this is where you're going to find them. If you're drawn to this information and you're doing the readings, you're watching the videos, you're kind of like talking to family, talking to friends, that's great. You're spreading it. You're doing that work of raising the frequency and the energy of those around you. But what this conference does is that it takes us to this new level where you get to meet other members of your soul group, and you're all here you're all here together to do a mission. And as you discover one another, you will begin to shine more, because it's like you're breaking the barriers. Because I think finding one's soul group is a very important step in all of this. I'm finding it. And, I mean, as you know, we're finding all these incredible connections with the people that we're working with, finding out, oh, wow, well, in a past life, we were this and that and this and that. And it's like, wow, that's incredible. Because psychologically, we've got barriers to break through. Some of us are better than others at breaking those barriers. So as we connect with one another, go to Gsic, find your soul group. I would say that's important. And because the vibration is so high at the Gsic conference, I mean, you on the one hand, you got the speakers, you got the information, you got the incredible organization. You did a wonderful job with the last one. I was very impressed with it all. You've got everything there. The environment is there for your consciousness to kind of get raised, so that you then can recognize who you truly are, or who others are, and you can make those soul group connections. So, and to me, that really is very important. And I say that I'm not saying that just because I want to plug the conference, because I think the conference is important, and I want to plug the conference. But this is what the military is doing. The military is doing that. JP described one of the things that happened, where he was, after he performed one of the missions, he was taken to the military base where he operates out of. And I was taken to that base too. JP gave my wife and I a guided tour, so I know the base. But he was taken to this facility, to this base, and he described going into a kind of like a box-like structure in this room. And what this technology does, it was some kind of extraterrestrial technology, is that the military are trying to find JP's star group. They're trying to find who he's connected with through the past lives. They're able to track the past life memories and of people, and they're finding JP's star group. So when JP told me that, I was pissed. I was like, fuck. These bastards are finding our soul group. Shit. How dare they? I was angry. It's like, how dare they? Yeah. But they're doing it for a reason, because they're understanding that these soul groups are the ones that are bringing in all of the higher information. It's the soul groups. It's like some of these soul groups are crews from the arcs. Mm-hmm. They're tracking the soul groups. So it's like, oh, fuck, they're doing that. We got to start doing that. We got to start finding our soul groups, because that's what the military are doing. And if we don't do it and just let them do it, well, we're going to be at a disadvantage, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
So we got to start doing that. So to me, that's very important, to start finding our soul groups. And, we're organically, we're doing it. But I think your conference is like a premier event. And I would tell people, just come, because you got to do it. You got to make that investment, travel to Orlando, because it's not just getting another information dump. You can get that online, watching videos, but you got to start finding your soul group. And that means going to places where they're going to be. And Gsic is the place where you're going to find your soul group, because they're going to be drawn to that, just as you're being drawn to that. And, and I think what you're doing is so important. I really acknowledge the role you're playing. You are definitely operating at a very, very high level. I'm sure you are connected in some way with some of these Galactic Federation commanders up there, that you're connected in some way with these beings, and you're being inspired to do this, because it's all about finding the soul groups now.
Yeah, it's time. It's definitely time, and it's important. Yeah, and we have to open gateways and let people come and share everything with them. And unfortunately, or fortunately, online, you and I can't talk about some of the things that we would love to. We would love to sit here and share more information from upstairs, but we can't because of censorship. So having this gathering and each individual speaker on stage, like I say to people, this is the greatest disclosure conference on planet Earth. And I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe that, for so many reasons. Important for the audience. I mean, how sophisticated, how emotionally intelligent and beautiful was just the audience alone last year?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, you felt it. I felt it. Everyone there felt it. And even though we had like a layer of security between the speakers and the audience, you could still feel it. It was wonderful. And I think for the audience, it's incredibly. It's just so uplifting to be in that energy. And I think this is a unique conference, because everyone that is speaking at that conference, we speak with a common purpose. It's not as though we're speaking at cross purposes with one another. There's a kind of harmony there, and you've gone to a lot of effort to make sure that there is harmony in the choice of speakers, that there is that complementary nature or interaction happening. And what that does is it creates the opportunity for this higher vibration to be created at this conference, where it is all about reconnecting, and it's all about finding your soul group, your star family. And it's an emotional thing, because many of us have been here for multiple lives. These are buried memories now. We've kind of like forgotten, and something in our unconscious kind of like moves us in this direction. So when you and finding people that are on a similar frequency, you can bring up these memories, and it's going to be life-changing. If you meet members of your soul group, whatever it is that you've done in the past, whether you're crew of a space ark, whether you're part of the Galactic Federation, whether you're deep operatives from the Andromeda Council, whatever it is, you're here with others, and you got a support team. There's a soul group. We don't come in on our own. That's the one thing I notice. Because you think, you make that mistake. You think, oh well, here I am. My family, they think I'm crazy. They think I'm tinfoil hat. Your blood relatives think you're tinfoil hat. Don't believe you. Think you're deluded. Call you names. So don't talk to my daughter and poison her with your nonsense. That kind of stuff like that. It's like, oh my God, I'm here alone. But you're not alone. They're out there. We have a support team, and I'm very thankful that I've started to find and connect now with my soul team and soul group, and it's wonderful. And I'm looking forward to learning more now, because it's like, okay, I understand. I have a long way to go psychologically to break the barriers, because like there's a part of me that is like terrified of going down deep into the subconscious, because there's a lot of trauma to get through, and it's like I don't want to feel the trauma again. But you got to get through it. You got to get through the trauma. You got to be in that place of love and forgiveness, because the trauma separates us from our true selves, and it separates us from reconnecting with our soul group. So yeah, you just got to be in that place of love and forgiveness, so that when you start breaking through those psychological barriers, and I know you can talk to me about that, and you're a therapist. You've been helping people for years, but there's one thing. It's one thing to be intellectually aware of the fact that, okay, yeah, I'm a starseed. I've had past lives, and I was this, I was that, but to get into those memories, that's an emotional journey, and that's very different and very hard.
Yeah, again, depending where you're coming from. And like you say, we're at the point where we're ascending ourselves, and we're getting used to the new frequencies that are coming through sun codes and different ways on our planet, that we know the last thing is to look inside. And there are ways, and when we come to Gsic, I will be sharing some beautiful techniques to help people harmonize without having to go into the pain and the suffering and the trauma, because I think we're all pretty much done with the pain and trauma. So there are ways to acknowledge but also feel and recover self without having to go into that psychosis that none of us deserve to suffer anymore. Those days are really, really over for many of us. And yeah, so there'll be so much to be shared. And the other thing that I'm just beyond excited about is sharing all of our vendors. I think there's at least 20 at this stage vendors coming with on and off planet technology, free energy technology, things that have been taken from us that we will get to see, try out. We also have a literal med bed there, and people need to understand, because they hear something, go, oh my god, the med bed. There are so many different med beds. Some you stand in, lay down in, sit in. They're different sizes, colors. They have different frequencies, different modalities, different materials they're made of, different composite materials. And the one that we're bringing, which is Chris O'Connor and Larry Bayshaw, is going to be one that helps but rebalance, the nervous system. It's not going to grow a limb and find the blueprint of the original being, and then 3D 4D grow a limb, although those do exist. And there will be a stand there that our beautiful friend Alex Collier, he will be in the audience. He will also be announcing a couple of speakers on stage, but he will also be a vendor this year with a few other people, and they will be talking about some of the most incredible technology that we've ever had on our planet. And this is all really high level, military, white hat, shared. That's as much as I will say here. Yeah, so it's just I want everyone to come and immerse themselves in a really beautiful experience and get what they need. So on the Friday night, we have a beautiful show in the evening with Nikki Allen, who's a British clairvoyant medium, and she'll be showing people how to connect to the love inside, how to connect to the love of their loved ones, how to find that, that gateway within self. And she'll be giving messages. And then, of course, during the day, we have a full day of our beautiful speakers. And then on the Saturday night, for those that want to and get that other ticket, there's a dinner and a disco. And it's just a very different experience this year. And it'll be more like a 3 or 4 day event, retreat, spa, family reunion, communion. Really not enough words to express what I know we're doing and what we're going to be delivering to the people that come this year. It's just really quite the most exciting thing. And I'm so beyond thrilled and honored that you, Dr. Michael Salla, have agreed to come. And I think we're the only conference that you're doing this year, 2023.
Yeah, I've decided to just do this conference, the Gsic this year. I like doing the webinars. I do like every couple of months a webinar, and to me that it's a great way of being able to present information without traveling to conferences, and it's not that safe these days. And I am a target. I have to accept that I am a target. Because the people that I'm working with, JP, Elena, are at a very high level. Jean-Charles also, they are at the kind of like tip of the spear of this information, and I'm helping them get their information out. So that makes me a target. So I do try to kind of like avoid unnecessary travel, and so going to just one conference a year is good, especially the Gsic, because I know there's a very high vibe there. There's security there amongst friends and kind of family members, spiritual family members. And I just wanted to comment. The vendors that you're mentioning. I see this is, and I know you may actually make an effort to screen your vendors and make sure that what they're doing is in alignment. And I think that's very important, because as the years progress, as Gsic grows, and I know you have plans for the growth of Gsic, the technologies, more and more of those are going to percolate into the public arena, and Gsic will become a place where people can find technologies that can help them kind of like deal with the challenges that are coming in terms of a post-disclosure world, because that's going to be hard. In a post-disclosure world, there's going to be many sources saying, oh, buy my med bed, or buy my kind of like my magic wand that'll heal you or restore your limb. And there's going to be a lot of that. And so how do you sort that out? And I think conferences like Gsic, where there's a kind of like interconnected energy between the speakers, the audience, and the vendors, will become very important, because that'll be how a lot of these kind of like breaking new technologies can be released. So I think in the future, and you're starting this year, which is great, it's going to become very important for helping introduce these breakthrough technologies to a large mass of humanity that are going to be desperate to like, what's real? We want this, and so I think that's very important, and congratulate you on again having the vision to put that together.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Sala. That does mean the world to me. Yeah, we think we're going to have to have a stadium next year, the way that we're going, and again to have the honor of having the greatest technology in a safe environment for people to see. This is your future. Actually, this is your present, is what we should say. It's the present, now, and it makes me so proud. And people don't need to worry when they come. Yes, we have security for everyone's comfort. Everyone can relax knowing they're protected in so many different ways, and they can have access to the people. And I interview every single vendor. There are no exceptions. No one's coming in at the last minute. There are so many different layers of protocol and security that we go through. And there'll be no like soul trapping, soul harvesting, reptilian technology that will be sneaking in at the end to affect our beautiful people or anything like that. It's just not allowed, not on our watch, and certainly not on mine. I'm very much a Gestapo in that regard. I will protect and love and bring everyone together, and we will continue to rise in love together, and as you say, all connect with our soul families, and it's just so beautiful. Well, this has been so much fun, as always, just hanging out with you and interviewing you and getting more, because you interview so many people, and it's lovely for people to see the side that we see behind the scenes. You said the F word a couple of times.
Well, some things make me angry, and that what I described, that really made me angry, and I wanted to just express that. That really did.
So brilliant, so brilliant. Well, let me come to you for your final words for this broadcast.
Well, I think wonderful that people are open to this information, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with you. Hopefully, many of you will be able to come to the conference. If not, that's okay. I look forward to just in some way, people reconnecting, whether it's virtually, whether it's through a webinar, but I do like to meet people, whether it's in person at an event or whether it's virtually. I'm very open to people communicating with me, so people can email me, and yeah, just stay positive. Really good things are happening. The white hats really are in control behind the scenes. I mean, even though on the surface things look really chaotic, there's a lot of people putting out fear porn out there. There's a lot of fear porn, but it's all under control. The white hats are working with the positive extraterrestrials, and things will just, well, the truth will slowly come out, but it can't be stopped. I think that the space arcs, what they represent is this kind of awakening of humanity, that we are all interconnected in some way. And so, yeah, just stay positive, stay hopeful, don't buy into the fear porn, and I look forward to seeing you at some point. So thank you, Dani, for having me on the show.
Oh, Michael, it's my absolute pleasure. Love you. I'm so proud of you. And you're just such a blessing to so many. And however we come to find the information, it's just so incredible how many people find this group. I would say this Gsic group, of course, you're so much more than just the Gsic group. Of course, you all are. But it's just been the light and the joy in my life, especially in the last 3 years, that we're all witnessing this team that we are, and the love that we have between us, and the respect and the honoring, and the fact that we love humanity so much, and we love our beloveds upstairs so much, and that there's this beautiful dovetailing in together of all of these different souls. And we, people like you and I, we're literally witnessing our planet changing and raising in frequency, and there's just no words to express the joy for me personally that brings. And I'm just so pleased and happy and honored to be standing shoulder to shoulder with you, especially in that fancy shirt. I love that shirt. I totally wear that shirt. Bring it to the conference.
Definitely.
All right. Oh, well, God bless you. To you guys out there, I know you've probably really enjoyed yourselves and learning and hearing more about our dear Dr. Salla. His details will be under the broadcast, his latest book that he wrote with the beautiful JP. And of course, he will be there at Gsic, Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. So I send my love to you from my heart to yours, and we'll see you soon.